So is there a new Big Three in San Antonio?
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Spurs. We're doing the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Ken Spike San Antonio. I'm glad to have y'all back. Thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first and only stop for all things silver and black. Don't forget to subscribe to the Locked On Spurs newsletter. If you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description below. LO Spurs newsletter. Got you a link there. Sign up for free. Also, you know what to do. Subscribe over at the Locked On Spurs YouTube page, Canton Spy Plus app, so iTunes, Spotify, the list goes on and on. Make sure to do that right now. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You definitely want to FanDuel right now because new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You want to go to FanDuel right now. What are we talking about today? Well, as the rebuild continues, we're going to be looking at if there is a new Big Three in San Antonio. Now, the original Big Three, likely you never top those guys, but let's see if we can get close to it. So is the new Big Three Fox, Castle, and Wemby? We're going to be discussing that, as well as the wild card and all that. If the Spurs get, and likely will, a very high draft pick in a loaded draft, does that player kind of throw a wrench in things? It's a good problem to have here in San Antonio, let's put it that way. And then talking about you guys, Locked On Spurs fan comments. That's coming up later on the show. But yeah, I mean, so far so good, right? Before Wemby got hurt and was out for the season, putting up Wemby numbers, all-star, likely was going to be the defensive player of the year. So he's good, right? Then you got Castle, the young, promising rookie. Well, again, goes to the all-star event, putting up good numbers, likely has to wrap up, the rookie of the year trophy already. At this rate he's going. So that's a great building block. Then you bring in an all-star, De'Aaron Fox, scorer, Mr. Clutch, all that good stuff. It's shaping up that the Spurs kind of really formed possibly a new Big Three. We're going to discuss that and more with our guest. And guess who is back, everybody? It's Mr. James Pledger, San Antonio Sports Star's very own and host of Extra Innings. James, welcome back, buddy.
What's happening, Jeff? How you doing, my brother?
I feel like I'm on your floorboard right now, looking up at you in your car, standing down because the angle there. But how's everything going with you?
It's good, man. Everything's been going well. I'm about to start Daredevil Born Again, so I'm really excited that Zach's back.
Yes. I'm looking forward to that. See that I'm wearing a Punisher. See how I tie it all together, a Punisher t-shirt.
Nice.
So where that is. Well, again, everybody, make sure to follow James on X at I Am Pledger. He's with San Antonio Sports Star and host of Extra Innings. He'll talk about that in just a few minutes. As you can see, he's driving to work if you're watching on YouTube. So we'll try to keep this short and sweet for him. So James, you heard the intro. You see the rundown. The Spurs, likely looking to form a core unit, something they can build around. And as far as this season is concerned, it looks like it could possibly be Wemby, Fox, and Castle. So with that being said, do you think that is the core unit? This is the new Big Three the Spurs are going to use to build around moving forward?
I mean, it's hard to argue against it. I mean, you've got an up-and-coming star in Stephon Castle, who proved it over All-Star Weekend. You've got a generational talent, Victor Wembanyama, who should be your centerpiece of this entire thing. And then you made a big trade for an all-star in De'Aaron Fox. So, I mean, you got that core together. Now, will you add to it? There's a possibility if, the 3% or whatever you're at in the draft happens to hit and your odds happen to be better than Atlanta's right now, your own. So, sure, maybe there's another piece that comes via the draft that can turn the 3 into a 4, but that's your immediate core, but it doesn't mean that it's your only core because of just how you're positioned moving forward and the flexibility you have. Because, I brought this up with you on Locked On, and now it's starting to really gain some traction, in my discuss with Dem Vassell, and obviously he had a great night the other night.
Right.
Finally, it feels like it's been, a couple of months since we've seen that Devin Vassell. So can he continue it or not? That's a real question. But the thing is, do you package guys with those bigger contracts, knowing these other contracts are coming up soon, like Wemby and Castle, and then whoever your rookie is after that, or maybe whatever? Do you move off of like a Devin and a Keldon and bring in a Kevin Durant? Yes, I understand he's an aging star, but he gives you the ability to turn things to win now. Wemby can learn from him and his game because their games are very similar in a sense. And at the same time, by the time his contract's coming off the books, well, it's time to re-sign Wemby, it's time to re-sign Castle, and you move forward with the experience that they gained with them. So, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, when you say big three core guys that are going to be there, that feels like the core, although that the rest of the core pieces that can go around them can change and be very kind of in flux in terms of age, youth, whatever it may be, because of the draft picks you have and the potential you could use to bring in stars around them.
Yeah, and I think for me that's the wild card in all this is the draft, and we'll get to that in just a few seconds. But is the fact that they can still flip some of these guys to bring in stars via trade. So there's that. Also, too, free agency. We saw with De'Aaron Fox. Sure, it wasn't a free agent move; it was a trade. But you saw if you're going to use him as an example, he's an all-star wanting to come to play in San Antonio. So does that change? Do you start seeing that perk up more likely? Also, too, I'm not trying to rain on the parade, but are we jumping the gun a little bit too much on Castle? He's having a phenomenal rookie season. He likely is the rookie of the year. But should we give him more time before we start putting him up there in a big three scenario? What are your thoughts?
I mean, you can always jump to conclusions with everything, especially when you've only seen it for a short period of time. But, we made the same conclusions with Wemby, and is he the next face of the league, before he'd even played a single, minute in the NBA. Like these expectations are there and they've been crafted, and he is living up to those expectations because of what Castle has done this year. He has increased those own expectations upon himself because of his play. And to think that, this is as good as it's going to get, he's not going to get better, that is a very dense way of looking at things, because most players do continue to evolve and get better throughout their career. They don't. Now, could he struggle some next year in an adjustment period? Absolutely. Does it mean that he's going to be worse? No. It means that, his development is still happening, but the arrow is definitely pointed extremely up for, and more so than we can say for when we thought Keldon or Devin was quote unquote the next, because this guy's doing it on a completely different level in terms of points per game and just the usage and how he's doing it with his effectiveness on both sides of the floor. Like, there are tangible things to point at with Steph Castle to where you go, this is different from when we thought, is Devin the next future, or is Keldon the next future building block? Steph Castle is likely going to win Rookie of the Year. When you do that, the bar is immediately set at a different level for you as a player, because you came in and competed at a level with your peers that no other rookie could compete with.
Yeah, absolutely. He is James Pledger with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on X at I Am Pledger. When we get back, we're going to continue talking about this topic. Is there a new big three in San Antonio? What wild cards are out there that could change that for the good as well? Yes, there are good reasons why that could change, and so much more right here on Locked On Spurs with James Pledger. But first, let's talk about BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Who is in your support system? We all need people to lean on, whether it's friends, family, mentors, or professionals. Even the strongest leaders and athletes know that asking for help makes them better. Therapy is one way of building a strong support system. It's not just for tough times, it helps with setting boundaries, developing coping skills, becoming the best version of yourself. Learning to ask for help. I've seen firsthand how valuable it is to have a support system. It keeps you grounded and motivated. What about everyday benefits? Therapy isn't just about crisis moments. It's a tool for self-improvement, stress management, and navigating life's challenges. Convenient and accessible, BetterHelp is fully online, making it easier than ever to connect with a licensed therapist from anywhere. With over 30,000 professionals available, you can find the right fit and switch at any time at no cost. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA.
Oh, hey, this is Morty Smith and Cheese. You are listening to Locked on Spurs with Jeff Garcia on Cheese.
We're back right here on Locked on Spurs with Matt Murdock. Oh, wait, that ain't the Daredevil. That's James Pledger of San Antonio Sports Star. Make sure to follow him on there. What's that?
I said the devil's work is never done.
The devil's work is never. And speaking of work, as you can tell if you're watching on YouTube, James is en route to work right now. So yes, at least the Sports Star work is never done for James Pledger. Make sure to check him out on Extra Innings. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. By the way, James practically lives at work. Seriously, you never really see him away from the studio. So that's why it's a big piece out there at the Star. We're talking about the Big Three. Is there a new Big Three in San Antonio? And if so, who are they? We established that already in segment 1, Fox, Castle, Wemby. But could things change? Obviously, they can. From a star coming to San Antonio, as James pointed out in the first segment, Kevin Durant, for example. So many things. Now, here's another wild card, too, is when you look at Fox, he technically could be a flippable player. Yeah, I could see down the road if they got to make a move, and he's on in this X team wants to come on here. I don't know if I'm completely sold if he's solidified himself as a player that's going to end his career with San Antonio. And not to say that can happen to Wemby or Castle. We've seen megastars leave teams. But Fox seems to be, I guess, the loose screw in a Big Three conversation. Your thoughts?
I don't think so. I mean, they made a point to go out and get him. They're about to sign him to at least a 5-year extension or a 4-year extension to 29. That's going to tie him here for the immediate future for the time being, and that's through Wemby and Steph's first extension. So, yeah, Big Threes can go through it. I don't think we're ever going to see what we saw with Tim, Tony, and Manu again. Like that, how many teams have ever done that in the first place? To where, yeah, there are Big Threes, but Big Threes change through generations and iterations of teams because most players don't play on the same team for that long throughout their career. And there's multiple reasons behind that, whether it's salary concerns, whether it is deteriorating play concerns, or whatever it may be. Now, San Antonio is a different animal than the rest of the league, but to say that, like, there's going to be another Tim, Tony, and Manu is a fool's errand. And you're setting yourself up for failure when you compare anyone to what that was because it was unique and special. I mean, most players, you get 5 to 8 years with them, and then they're off to another team at some point. Even stars in this league, outside of, let's say, Steph Curry, they don't remain on the same team throughout the entirety of their careers. It's just not the way it happens. I mean, look at Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, he has gone from Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis as his running mates, now Damian Lillard, and they're probably going to tweak it again at some point before Giannis is done as a Buck. The Suns were in the finals a few years ago and that core was Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and Chris Paul.
Yeah, we saw that in Brooklyn when the Nets tried to do that with Kyrie, Durant, and Harden. Didn't work out. Maybe the closest in recent history is the Thunder when they had Durant, Harden, and Westbrook, but that was probably the closest they got. So, but I look at the draft. So names like Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey,
Sure.
The list goes on and on. If the Spurs are in the position to get that, I think you're adding to the Big Three.
Are they?
Are you? I mean, think about it. If you bring in let's just say luck happens, Cooper Flagg is there whenever they pick. Let's just say that.
He's there. How many 9 teams are going to pass on him?
Well, hey, the Spurs could move up and get him. By the way, is Flagg really the number one pick? Is he the hands down number one pick at this point?
I think so. It's his skill set more than anything. But yeah. I'm if it happens and they win the lottery with their 3 or 2% chance or whatever it is right now, like, cool. But I think we need to set ourselves up for more realistic expectations when it comes to the draft and start thinking about, players that could actually be there when you're actually picking somewhere between like 9 and 11 or 12. Those are realistic expectations. To have these Flagg or Trey Jones or Trey Johnson, excuse me, or Ace Bailey, like these feel like incredibly wild reaches in which the fan base is setting themselves up for disappointment, if it will. If it happens, awesome. There's a difference between like you're praying for Wemby because you were actually one of the top 3 teams in losses to have the highest odds at getting that, right? Like that made sense to be like, oh, it's Victor Wembanyama. That's a real possibility. Yeah. So when you think about Cooper Flagg and these visions of sugar plums and fairies run through your head, like it's a fool's errand to think about it because the Spurs aren't positioned like previous years to really capitalize on that. At that, you're hoping for a 1 in a million chance. It's more like winning an actual lottery than winning the draft lottery because the odds are so stacked against you. So you should think about things that could actually benefit this team more so than a Cooper Flagg or an Ace Bailey or Trey Johnson, whoever it may be. Think about players like Shooter from UConn or Illinois that can be 3-and-D wing types, things this team literally lacks right now, which is one of the reasons that the team is as bad as it is and sputtering in nowhere, because you have this big 3 talent and really nothing to play off of it. And a lot of the reasons a lot of these big 3s fail is because they're not built properly around said big 3. They are so heavily and reliant upon that big 3 that the team like Phoenix right now can't do anything, A, when they're off the court, or B, that big 3's not really conducive to playing together. You mentioned Brooklyn earlier. Like, same principle. Like, you need to figure out what is best for this team. And yes, Cooper Flagg will be great. At some point, you've got a gluttony of riches that I don't know is sustainable in terms of not just, cash flow, but also just playing together. You need players that know their roles. And I think that's kind of been a little bit of the issue with Devin Vassell is he doesn't know his role or isn't acquiescing to the role that the Spurs need him to be more so than anything. They need people that can literally spot up, come off screens, and space the floor for them. They've got their penetrators. They've got their playmakers. They've got their scorers. They've got Steph Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. They're cool. They need guys like Harrison Barnes, who, if he gets, 6 to 8 threes a game, because that's, how the game's unfolding, because he's been left open out there and they're kicking it to him, cool. If he gets 3, also cool, because that's what the game plan calls for, and you need people to fit into those molds. I think a lot of the current issues with this Spurs team and why it's not better than it should be with the additions they had. This is pre-Wemby injury. Is the fact that no one's either knows or accepting the role that they should be playing on this team.
Yeah,
and you need a big. You need a big.
Yeah, you need a big.
The Spurs were so bad at big that they signed Bismack Biyombo off the street, had not been playing.
Yep.
And he looked like a revelation for 2 10-day contracts, and now you've signed him for the rest of the year. Yeah, Bismack Biyombo's good, but the reason he looks as good as he does is because that's how bad you were at the position.
Yeah.
That's how poorly constructed this roster has been.
Yeah. Yeah. When it comes to roster construction, Brian Wright has his hands full, but still, you got to get bringing the shooters. You got to bring in bigs. You got to keep bringing people who know the roles. And look at Keldon Johnson right now. Excuse me.
Doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. But at least for the most part, he understands that he's no longer a starter and he's off that bench. And he's been putting up some good numbers. But nevertheless, the Spurs, right now they seemingly have at least a good core foundation to build around. We'll see how they add to it. Maybe it will. Hopefully it'll turn into a big three. We don't know. But like James said, if you just look at recent history, big threes are so rare nowadays. He is James Pleasure with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow my next at I Am Pleasure. When we get back, we're going to be talking about you guys, Locked On Spurs fans, and the comments you're leaving over at the YouTube page. But first, let's talk about FanDuel.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And really, for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into the same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I miss a chance. Plus, with the app, it's easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You just want to go to FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. How about that? Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
This is Emilio Rivera, El Padrino for the Mayans MC. You are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
We're back right here on Locked On Spurs with James Pleasure. He is with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on X at I Am Pleasure. He is host of Extra Innings. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. James, let's see what the Locked On Spurs fans are talking about. They got a lot to say.
What do they got?
Go. Well, let's get with the first one here. First one's from Metal Babble 346. Cool name there. That sounds like the name of a rock band back in the 80s. Metal Babble.
It really does.
It really does. Yeah, good job.
Like what was that show on Adult Swim?
Metalocalypse.
Metalocalypse. You got Metalocalypse, and then the recent DC of the dark metal event. It's kind of in that vein, and I'm digging it.
It is. All right, Metal Babble. Let's see what you got to say. Quote, the jump from Wemby tank team to 500 ball playoff team was impressive, but reality set in and the Spurs are back into lottery form. What do you think about that comment from Metal Babble? They're basically saying, yeah, it was a good start, but here we are.
And I'm tired of Team Tank. I know I love the Charge there for a while, but this is a team that, and part of the reason they're losing is the bad habits ingrained during those tank years. Yeah. The Spurs haven't had to deal with this because they've never lost, had losing seasons more than 2 years in a row. They've never missed the playoffs more than 2 years in a row until this last, 5, 6
years, yeah.
Ever since basically Kawhi left. And you tried to keep it afloat with LaMarcus and DeMar, but we're just missing. That's from there to now, we've been in this perpetual cycle of tear it down, but try and win. until we've torn it down to the studs and winning is impossible. So we go get Wemby, and like we're letting these young guys kind of learn and fail on the fly. But now, like, they've been losing for so long that some of these habits are ingrained and it's visible on the court. So now that the pieces are in place and you've added a couple of leadership pieces with Barnes and CP3, it's just not enough because habits are habits because they're ingrained in you, and breaking a habit is a very hard thing to do, which is why winning for 20 plus years was really easy for the Spurs because they had the habits in line to continue to be great for as long as they were. Now that they have perpetually been bad for as long as they have, the habits are starting to creep into their daily function, and that trend needs to be broken. And
Yeah, exactly. And the addition of Fox too, hopefully that'll help in getting the winning habits on board with this team. So and who knows if CP3 sticks around next year or not, or Barnes sticks around or not, doesn't matter. Hopefully those winning habits that they're trying to impress upon the young kids sticks with them moving forward. All right, the next comment here is from That's Canny. Now he's reacting, James, to the recent guest we had regarding the controversial Wemby jersey auction. By now, everybody knows about that. Everybody knows about that. I know you do. You texted me your thoughts. Everybody knows about what went down, from the photo op with the little boy and Wemby to the golden auction to the lawsuit. So, with that being said, quote, and mind you, this person heard the interview full, so they definitely got a lot to say. I'm sorry, but hearing his side of the story, I can say without a doubt that this dude messed up as soon as he thought to ask his 5-year-old son if he wanted to potentially sell it. You know the story, James. You may have listened into the interview. Where do you stand on this Wemby auction jersey lawsuit thing?
To be honest, I couldn't care one way or the other. It's his property. He can do with it what he wants. Now, that said, all actions have consequences. There is a consequence for your action, whatever that may be. And when it's something as high profile as what you did to get Victor Wembanyama to come and autograph something and do a jersey swap and a picture and everything with your kid, knowing what you did, whether it was for money and maybe you needed the money, I don't know. I don't care. That is not my That is not my prerogative. It is none of my concern, and it is actually none of my business. But when you do it in a high-profile manner, and then you do the second thing in a high-profile manner, everything you do is now open in the public and in a high-profile manner. And to think that fans, the player himself, the organization wouldn't have an adverse reaction to what you're doing, that's on you. Like, you've made the bed, you get to sleep in it. And it's really easy to be like, yeah, I did it for money and I'm okay with that because we needed the money or whatever it may be, or I thought I was going to get more money or whatever your reasoning for doing it was. That is on you. That is your reason. You can't cry as the victim
Right
after the fact. Like, you've made your choice. That's your choice. All choices have consequences. Some are greater than others. But when it's in such a public forum, the way you've made it to be, you have become a public persona in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, we would have never, if he would have kept this jersey, wouldn't have heard higher hair on social media, would have been nothing. And he could have gone about his daily life and he would have been brought up in passing thoughts of, oh, remember that cool kid? I wonder what that kid's up to. Like, he's this old now, and look, he's still got the jersey framed in his living room or whatever it may be. Like, that's a cool thing to always look back upon. But when you do the other thing, you are subject to criticism because you've done it openly.
Yeah. Yeah, that your sentiment and your thoughts is pretty much what a lot of Spurs fans or just NBA fans are talking about. Even collectors have chimed in on this, saying that when you do what you did, putting it up for auction initially, that's it. Regardless of how you did it, it still went up there. You were dragged up there or you were forced. It doesn't matter. You still went forward with it. So a lot of Spurs fans, they just say, or just a lot of fans have left some interesting comments. And if you want to read those comments about what the individual involved in the Wemby thing, go look at the Locked On Spurs. It was this past Monday. Check it out. Now, just a heads up, it is audio only, but that was his choice. According to I do. Yeah, I do feel for him. It feels like, he just goofed up, and he's trying to make amends, to it, maybe to his son, I think. And if it's a father, that's probably what he feels he needs to do is right. All right, thanks for all leaving those comments here at Locked On Spurs, and subscribe to the Locked On Spurs YouTube page right now. James, what do you got going on over there at the Star? Extra Innings? How are you guys keeping busy out there?
Oh, we're busy. Of course, a lot going on with the Spurs, what's going to happen. And I think, as this season dwells on and the connection between Kevin Durant and the Spurs probably continues to grow, I think that's going to be more and more of a process as we get closer to the lottery. That's going to be more of a thing. And hell, in between that, next week's NFL free agency. Yeah. The machine never stops. And then after that, we're building up to the draft. Never stops. So it is a good time. Is a lot of fun. There's a lot to do, but that's a good thing, especially in our line of work. When stories are flowing like water out of a faucet, that is a good time to be alive. You just don't want it to come to a trickle.
No, and that's why you got to check out San Antonio Sports Star 94.1 on the San Antonio Radio FM dial, or just go to their YouTube page. And don't forget to check out Extra Innings with James Pledger. It's usually in the evening, 6 o'clock hour-ish, give or take. But check it out there. James gives you pretty much a wrap of everything that's been happening in sports, and, of course, at the Star as well. So all that and more just by simply following James on X at @IamPledger. And as always, we thank y'all for making Locked On Spurs your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Campfire, plus that Locked On Spurs newsletter in the description below on YouTube. Click that link right there. Before I let James go, I'm going to get him so riled up right now. I finished Daima. It's basically GT. It's GT. It's GT.
But
it's
completely fun.
GT.
But it's fun.
Yeah. I just don't understand why did Toriyama want to rehash-ish like GT again? Was he trying to maybe fix what he perceived as a bad thing? Because that wasn't his thing. He didn't do GT.
That wasn't.
Yeah.
Toriyama wasn't his, but
yeah,
you could tell he liked it enough to incorporate it. Like he felt there were some redeeming things about GT. GT wasn't the greatest thing ever. No, it was far from it. But there were great villains. When you talk about Omega Shenron, you talk about Super 17. Like, there were some really good villains that came out of it.
How to ever get Baby? Baby was just awesome.
Baby was a great villain.
Yeah.
And then you also have one of the most iconic transformations in Dragon Ball in Super Saiyan 4, which was so different from the previous Super Saiyan transformations.
Yeah. Before I get you, how can I say this Disney friendly here? Because no, I'm saying it Disney friendly. And that's why I think everybody knows what happened. But do you blame Vegeta for stopping his fight because of Bulma threat to take away from him?
That was the most relatable I've ever felt of Vegeta in my life.
Look, listen.
You, my guy, I got you.
Listen, if your girl says, I'm going to take away this private moment that we have together, if you keep on doing it, James, and you're stopping immediately.
Well, done. I'm not going to fight to the death anymore.
For those of y'all who know, you know what Bulma threatened to take away from Vegeta. Again, he is James Pledger with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on X at @IamPledger. Do that right now. We'll be back tomorrow talking all things silver and black as the Spurs season continues. So for James Pledger, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock in this episode of Locked On Spurs.